Pranakasha live stream. Hey folks, it's Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking to Mr. John Billingsley.
John Billingsley, yeah.
John Billingsley. Oh.
Yeah. I like to say it like Thurston Howell III on Gilligan's Island. Just as I finish my martini.
I thought that was apple juice.
No. This is a Grand Marnier martini.
Oh, Grand Marnier, I see. Oui, monsieur.
Yes.
Now, of course, I got screwed up. I was thinking John Billingsley was the doctor in Voyager, but no. It's the Doctor Phlox in Enterprise.
What a way to start this interview. You were
I know. I mixed you guys up.
Different guy. Holy cow.
Yeah, I mixed you guys up. I'm sorry to say right off the bat.
You are not alone. Ethan Phillips. Yes, the wonderful Ethan Phillips. I get confused with him all the time because all of us slightly paunchy aliens look alike.
They all look alike, yeah. Okay. And they act alike too.
We all look alike.
Well,
Rubberhead.
So that's your claim to fame in our Star Trek world, and that's how a guy like me was like, oh, I want to talk to him. But you've done a whole bunch of other stuff, and I think your main thing right now is the Hollywood Food Coalition, right?
Yeah, I'm still acting, but I haven't pursued it with a vengeance in the last few years. I started volunteering for the Hollywood Food Coalition about 6 years ago. And
I didn't know that.
Became their board president and have been pretty integral and pretty deeply involved for some time. So yeah, it kind of pushed the career a little bit off to the back burner.
That's mostly just out of the goodness of your heart. Like, did you actually get paid for it, or?
No, all volunteer, but I've been a volunteer my whole life in different capacities. I feel very blessed. I got to make a nice living doing something I dig, and
great.
Always been a part of me that's just wanted to kind of find ways to stay involved in my community and give back. To be honest with you, I was a theater actor for many, many years, and as a theater actor, I didn't really make a buck until I was almost 40. So I was always very cognizant of the fact that although I was never in danger of living on the streets, I was never broke, but I always had to mind my P's and Q's. I definitely was going to check under the sofa cushions to make sure I could find all the coins I needed. And if I walked into a bar or restaurant, it was like, who might buy me an omelet today?
Well, so I'm a musician. Yeah. And actually today I hit it big. Look at all this.
All right. Oh, nice.
I played a church gig and I get paid. Now, I've been doing this church gig for 30 years. And I have to drive like 30 miles to get there. And then I play the service for an hour. And then back 30 years ago, they paid us $50 per service. And then a couple of years ago, they gave us a raise. So now we get $60 a service. After 30 years.
That's more than $60.
Well, this is 120 because they forgot to pay me last time. So, and today, for whatever reason, they paid me in tens.
All right.
But yeah, so I mean, so the musician's life, it's kind of the same as the acting, like it sounds like, where.
Well, the theater. There's a whole different game when you get into film and television, which is why I migrated to film and television. And,
right. So now you're just rolling in dough and
passing
out hundreds as you need it.
You can make a nice living in film and television if you're, if the gods are with you, and although
because I know a couple actors that are, I would consider quite successful because they guest star in many shows and many well-known shows. And yet on the weeks that they're working, they're doing good. But then there's a lot of weeks in between when they're not making anything.
Well, two things. One, in the industry, what they call long money is the money you make when you do a show, when you do a series, when you're a series writer.
When you're a star.
Not a star. I was always like number 6 or 7 on the call sheet, and I had a number of shows that didn't make even 13 episodes, but it still adds up. And I'm married to an actress who also has done pretty well.
Oh, okay.
So between the two of us for a good 15 years, one of us was always working.
Oh, good.
5 shows. She was on a show. We don't have kids. We saved our dough. We've always lived fairly
frugally.
Yeah, I mean, not by not by what used to be my standards. I mean, I used to be like, I knew where I could get a free meal on any given day of the week. But by human standards, I still live pretty frugally. So we were able to save our money, and
so you don't have to have a side gig to fill in the gaps.
I do not have to have a side gig. I still like to act. I still do act. I still am out there auditioning. It's also harder as you get older to get a lot of work.
Right.
I mean, there aren't as many roles for older actors, and the nature of the way you audition these days has changed. You used to be able to walk into the room and audition in front of people. As a theater actor, I always loved that. I loved to get a note. I loved the idea that you could
connect with the audience.
And even if you weren't right for the part, they have to watch your whole audition, so they might hire you for something else. Nowadays, you only submit on tape. They can see a lot more people, and I suspect that the producers, if they don't think you're right for it, will turn that tape off within
first 5 seconds. Yeah,
5 seconds. So it's just that you're pushing a bigger boulder uphill.
Yeah,
and so consequently, I'm just a little less enamored of the process than I used to be. I'm still I was on a show in the
since you mentioned it, I just want to throw in that my show is now SAG approved as of January 1st.
Congratulations. Yeah. Well, and the other thing, to your point, is if you're in the business for a long time, you have a residual stream.
Yeah.
And a SAG pension. So, I'm a big union guy. I have a SAG pension. My wife has a SAG pension. We have 2 AFTRA pensions. This is before SAG AFTRA merged. 2 equity pensions. My wife has a teacher's pension. So, huzzah for pensions, although
huzzah.
Small number of people who are getting them anymore, sadly.
Actually, as an IT guy, I do have a pension too through Washington State.
There you go. Oh, you in Washington?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
Well, I tell everybody Seattle, but to tell you the truth, I'm like 30 miles north of Seattle.
I live in Seattle.
But nobody knows where Linwood is, so I just say Seattle.
Where Linwood is because I used to live in Seattle.
Really? When was that?
I lived there for a number of years. I lived there from 82 to 95. I lived on Capitol Hill, the U District, West Seattle. I had a theater company there called Book It.
Wait a sec. So wait a minute. What were the years for Enterprise? That was after that then?
Well, after that, yeah. Okay. Enterprise was 2001 to 2004.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you were in Seattle when I was. So I mean, I went to Evergreen State College.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then, but I graduated from the UW. Okay. I lived in Ballard, with my mom. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we got the connection.
Ballard has changed, man.
Oh, totally. Now, well, get this. So my mom bought her a 2-story house in Ballard, and I think it was in 91. She bought it for like $150,000. And then when she retired to go to the retirement home, she sold it like 3 years ago for $1.2 million.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts.
It's crazy.
The first place I lived in Seattle in 1982 was a 2-story, 4-bedroom house, ramshackle, granted, on East Lake, and we paid $375 for it. Rent.
For rent. $375. Okay.
$375.
Now for $1,500, you get a studio that's basically a dump.
No, it's even worse. It's even worse in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the most expensive city in the country in terms of living costs. You have to spend almost half of your income to cover your rent.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I know a guy. You probably know guys like this too. There's a guy that I know who's an actor. The reason why I know is because I stayed in his place. He has a 2-bedroom apartment, kind of near Warner Brothers Studios, like within, 10-minute lift from Warner Brothers. And then what he does is he Airbnbs out the 2nd bedroom. Oh yeah. And so he pretty much covers his rent. Yeah. That was my last place I stayed in West Seattle. I was staying in some lovely Kelly Lyles. Hi, Kelly. I was staying in Kelly Lyles' bedroom. This is pre-Airbnb. She was just renting it out. Nowadays, Airbnb, everybody on the block right now. I'm up in the West Hollywood Hills. The house across from me is an Airbnb. The house down the street is an Airbnb. Okay.
Yeah.
West Hollywood. So you live kind of near, do you know Mark Zickery?
No.
Oh, okay. You probably know Armin Shimmerman though, right?
Oh, sure. Of course I know Armin, yeah.
Well, Mark and Armin are friends. So you sort of know Mark. Okay. Mark's the Space Command guy. Space Command, AKA Twilight Zone guy.
I might know him by sight, and it's possible. I mean, you meet a lot of people, as you know, in the Star Trek world. You meet a lot of people. So over the long arc of time, I have a a pretty good memory for faces.
He's this show, Space Command.
Okay, haven't seen it.
There's a whole bunch of Star Trek actors in it. Oh no!
Oh no! Oh no! Yeah, you got a whole Rube Goldberg contraption room there. I can see.
It's true. Actually, everything is on the verge of falling over.
Yeah.
So if I just breathe on it the wrong way, oh shit! What happened? Wait a minute. Did I lose a piece?
That's
Something
possible.
broke off.
Don't obsess about it now. Don't obsess about it now. We're in the middle of an interview. You'll have to deal with it later. If you want to get down on the floor and look around, I'll just vamp while you're gone.
Okay, so you vamp. I see. There's something wrong. Well, maybe it's not. Okay.
You're gonna get obsessed about it. You're one of those guys, aren't you?
I just want to look really fast.
I knew it. This is cool. This is the first interview. Hello, everybody. While our host is gone, let John Billingsley just talk a little bit about himself without any interruption. Oh, here he is. He's back again. You're probably cut that part out, but this may be my favorite part.
Look, I actually prefer to do see if I do an unedited video that's like 90 minutes long, that's the best, because then if there's no cuts, then everybody knows we were able to wrap through the whole thing and keep it going without any cuts.
Well, don't cut that part, because that's my favorite part. I've never been on an interview before where the interviewer had to kind of get down on the floor to find a missing piece of a starship that he knocked.
I'm trying to figure out what's gone. I mean, there's something gone.
Don't obsess about it. You're going to get obsessed. You're going to drive yourself crazy.
See, that's not supposed to be flat right there.
I feel like I know you. I know many people like you.
You ever watch the Orville?
Yeah, I was on the Orville.
You were?
You didn't do any of your research.
Shit.
You don't know anything. You didn't know I lived.
I've watched the Orville. I love the Orville.
You didn't know I was on the Orville. You thought I was Ethan Phillips. I'm going to turn this interview basically into a derision fest.
Okay, derive away. Well, I do have your Wikipedia page, and I don't see any Orville on here.
Wikipedia? You can't trust Wikipedia, for God's sake. What about
there it is.
What about my IMDb page?
Oh, yeah.
Did you check that out?
Wait a second. I remember that episode.
Not only was I on the Orville, but I was on the Orville with Bob Picardo.
Yeah, and you guys both ended up being evil.
No, I was evil. You fell asleep during that episode.
I watched it twice.
I'm losing respect for you by the minute, honey. Come on, fuck up. Jeez.
Okay, well, see, the thing is, creative people, we're so busy creating our own stuff that everything becomes mush.
I'd have bought that until you said you watched the episode twice.
I did watch it twice. Look, every day I put out hashtag Orville's season 4. We knew the Orville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I grant you, now I don't watch the Orville, but
you don't watch it? You were on it, but you don't watch it.
I don't watch much of anything. I read a lot of books. I like to read. That's the thing I like. So yes, I watched.
Okay, speaking of the Orville. All right, I got it. Speaking of the Orville,
I watched a few episodes. We can't talk over each other. I watched a few episodes.
I thought but it's not cool.
It's not cool. The episode that I was in, the part I was in, was not particularly amusing. So it's very possible that you would not necessarily remember the episode I was in because it didn't have the cleverness I thought that some of the other Orville episodes.
I know what happened. I blanked it out because you ended up being evil, and I didn't like that.
I was evil, but you thought I was Ethan Phillips at the time, so.
Well, maybe then I did, and I don't know.
I don't know.
But okay, Molly Hagan, you know her, right?
Molly Hagan, yes.
Wasn't she in the same episode?
She was, and in fact, I recruited her to join the board of the Hollywood Food Coalition because.
There you go, because that's the connection. Because I not this year, but the previous year, Molly had a vendor table at Star Trek Las Vegas.
Yes, I was there. We went out to dinner.
Okay. Well, I was there too. But I saw Molly sitting there all forlorn, like, because she wasn't getting a lot of attention. So I felt sorry for her. So I went over and talked to her, and I'm like, wait a minute, you were on the Orville.
Right.
So then we took very nice selfies. We pretended like we were gazing in each other's eyes romantically and so on.
I adore Molly Hagan.
She's neat. I really like her. And we kind of DM'd each other for a while on Twitter and stuff. So I don't know. That's the thing is like the thing that I really dig about the fandom and stuff is getting to know the actors. And some of them are such like great, beautiful, warm, wonderful people. It's just so fun to hang out with them.
And then there's me.
Well, yeah.
I know, there's a whole separate category.
So anyhow, but then So this whole Hollywood food bank thing, of course,
Food
was new to
coalition.
me. Coalition. Okay. So the idea is that
Yes, and we're not.
surprisingly,
I'm gonna give you my riff.
okay, let's hear. Riff
We are
away,
not
man.
necessarily, we are not a food bank, although we do
Okay.
collect and share food. But it started and has been going for many years, almost 40 years. It started
Oh,
as an organization that provided a hot and multi-course meal to people in need who were living on the streets.
of
And
Hollywood.
yes, actually, it was originally the Greater West Hollywood Food Coalition. West Hollywood is actually a separate community to the west of Hollywood. We
Oh,
have
okay.
subsequently moved fully into Hollywood. We're now the Hollywood Food Coalition. We serve a hot multi-element meal every night of the week. Haven't missed a night. It's in 40 years.
I could use a
But
multi-element.
multi-element,
Yeah.
we have, actually, this is what I love, and this is what attracted me to the organization. I first came in to volunteer to make a fruit salad, wash the dishes.
I like fruit salad.
The meals were amazing.
Hmm.
Somebody would get a choice of a vegetarian option, a vegan option, or a carnivorian option.
Hmm.
We'd have green salad, fruit salad, multiple choices for dessert, multiple choices for beverage, usually a starch. It's really important to give people who may not be having, that might have been a choice,
Avez-vous
yes.
de la croix
That may very well have been a choice.
Oh,
But it's really important for people who do not necessarily, they may have, that may be their only meal of the day, to give people a choice of what they might want to eat. And the nature of the
oh,
way the organization kind of dealt with people with incredible dignity and grace really appealed to me.
oh.
As I got involved and became more and more passionate about it, my wife and I started rescuing more and more food, studio food, television shows, movie shoots, primarily to augment and buttress what we were serving our nightly clients. In addition, we were also handing out shoes and socks and toiletry kits,
Yeah.
prosthetics, laundry vouchers, connecting people with homeless services, with medical services, yada, yada, yada.
Okay, back up. So
Yeah,
rescuing, so you basically there's leftover food from the caterer from a show, and then you instead of throwing it away, you guys got it and
bingo.
served it before it was
Yeah,
while it was still fresh.
we created a little
Okay.
cadre of folks we called the pickup artists, and
Oh,
we would drive all over town and pick up great show food. And we
basically like
realized,
DoorDash, except it's free.
exactly. And we
Okay.
realized that in fact we were not only providing enough food for our own kitchen, but we were inundating them. So we started trying to share the food with other not-for-profits that did great
Oh,
shit, but that didn't have great meal programs. That grew into something we call the exchange. We now have a separate warehouse space. We rescue about 2 million pounds of food a year, and we share it
wow.
with about 130 other not-for-profits. And the gag is, like, if you run, as a, for instance, an organization that works with street kids, you don't serve a great lunch, you're probably not going to keep those kids, focused on the work. When you
Okay.
provide a great meal, when we were rescuing food from studios and we were suddenly serving, to them by sharing with the organization, Village Family Services, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, collard greens, peach cobbler.
Now, could you like serve something and say, well, like, this this cornbread was half eaten by Charlton Heston?
Yep. In fact, that's what the kids loved. We were sharing food from the shoot The Prom with Meryl Streep and James Corden. And when the kids found out they were having the same lunch that Meryl Streep just had, they were like, "I'm eating Meryl Streep's lunch." They loved it. As we
That's
have
cool.
as we have evolved, and in part because what happened when COVID hit and the studios kind of shut down and they changed the nature of the way they served a meal, we began to readjust the nature of the program. We got a warehouse space, put in a huge walk-in refrigerator and freezer. We now rescue from food wholesalers, grocery stores, farm-to-table programs. So a lot more of
Great.
what we share now is food to be cooked in a not-for-profit's kitchen. So we provide a lot of produce, protein, starches, as well as dairy, canned foods, but we also provide toiletry kits, clothing, additional supplies.
Wow.
And we sit at a lot of tables, which is the other thing I'm really proud of. It's hard. Rescuing food is a demanding thing. There are a lot of food
Right, because
deserts.
this is, I mean, you're under time pressure, right?
Exactly. You're in time pressure. You get a call. Hey, can you pick up yada, yada, yada? We need to get rid of it by. You have to cull it, sort it, make sure that you're, weeding the bad stuff out from the good stuff, refrigerate
Mm-hmm.
it, then get it to a place. It takes a village. So we're working with other
Wow.
organizations to see, can we identify more storage space, more refrigeration space, more
Huh.
transport capacity, more volunteer capacity. there's a lot of stuff that can only happen when you collaborate. So a lot of the work to me is about figuring out ways you can do a better job partnering. That's where the
Yeah. So, do you have any like restaurant chains that sponsor you guys? You know, like McDonald's or something like that,
well,
or
we worked with Panda Express for a
oh,
while.
okay,
We work with a wonderful organization called Coffee Commissary that
okay,
provides us with delicious pastries every week. Um, it's a lot of grocery stores. Imperfect Foods is another group we work with. They're the organization that kind of exists to say, hey, just because your rutabaga looks like, Franklin Roosevelt doesn't mean it's not a good rutabaga.
right.
So we get stuff from them. It
Well,
comes in all
actually,
sorts of different directions.
there's
Excuse me.
there's a grocery store chain in the Seattle area now called Grocery Outlet
Yeah.
that we buy our groceries from. It's basically rejects, you know, or just
Yep.
mildly
Yep.
unlooking, not good or whatever. It's overflow food, so they sell it for way less.
Yep.
It's the same stuff. Of
Yep.
course, you never really know what's going to be in stock because it kind of
Yep.
fluid as what shows
There's
up.
a ton of food wasted in America. And, actually, in here in Los Angeles, in California, there was a recent State Senate Bill 1383, that basically mandates that grocery stores, food wholesalers, what have you, save, as opposed to mulch, 20% more of the food that they would otherwise get rid of, which
Okay.
doesn't unfortunately help our organization or other not-for-profits as an organization that could theoretically take that food. It
Uh-huh.
doesn't get money to us to actually collect it. So that's one of the
Hmm.
things we're trying to figure out is how do we find a way to collectively fund the mechanism to take advantage of the food that's coming into the marketplace by law?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
but let me also pitch, because
okay.
this is the important part. As the former board president of the Hollywood Food Coalition and the current chair of the development committee, one of my jobs is to help fundraise and friend raise. We did last year something called Trek Talks, which
I
was,
remember that.
yes, Trek
Yes.
Talks was an 8-hour digital Jerry Lewis-esque telethon to raise money for the Hollywood Food Coalition. We are doing it again this year, January 14th.
Hmm.
And you can find out more by going to trektalks.net.
Link in the description.
trektalks.net.
Okay, we'll put it right down there.
That'll link you to the Hollywood Food Coalition, and it'll also link you, if you're interested in pre-donating, to
Hmm.
our donation website. But on the 14th, 8 hours of really cool guests. We're going to have some amazing guests that we can't announce yet. But we
Super
can
secret.
announce Brent Spiner, John Frakes, John
Ooh.
Ramsey, Bob Picardo, Nana Visitor, Terry Farrell. Last year we had 50 Star Trek guests.
Yeah.
It's going to a convention.
Hmm.
Only it's free, except we kind of want you to donate to the Hollywood Food Coalition.
Well, okay. So now, folks, podcasters out there, here's a tip for you. How did I get John on my show? You know how I did? I donated $100 to the Hollywood Food Commission, and then he responded, and then I saw it said JAB, and I'm thinking, that's probably John Billingsley.
It is.
So then I just said,
very,
hey, do you want to be on my show? And then he said, sure.
well,
So there you
this
go.
is a great season for having me on people's shows, because, as you've just seen, I am pitching Trek
Yeah.
Talk 2. That's one of the reasons I'm here. Now we've
Yeah.
covered that waterfront. Now we can talk about my career as a child molester on television. So have at it.
I'd rather talk about the Hollywood Food Coalition because now I'm more interested. So I thought the Hollywood Food Coalition specifically catered to poor actors, but I think what it does is that it caters to anybody in Hollywood that needs
And,
help.
and actually now anywhere in the city, because although our
Okay.
kitchen, for people who are, and it isn't just for people who are experiencing homelessness, it's anybody who just is in need of a meal. Sometimes it's
Okay.
people just their money for the month has run out. But the other thing that is cool about it is, as we have grown and as we've started sharing with these other organizations,
Mhm.
we're sharing food with organizations all through LA County. So our reach really, and LA County is huge. There are, I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, LA is gigantic.
LA is gigantic, but
Yeah.
our reach now is quite broad. And, some of what our work is, and some of what the work is generally, is to try and identify food deserts and underserved communities. This is to me one of the
Okay.
kind of staggering statistics about food insecurity, which is probably something that most people have heard a lot. But 1 in 5 American kids are food insecure, which
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go hungry, but it means they wake up and they're not sure where is their next meal coming from? What is it going to be? Will it be healthy? Will it be hot? Will I be able to finish it? Am I eating it on the run? Yada, 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 in the richest country in the world. So one of the things we're trying to do in our small way, in collaboration with other organizations, is to kind of address issues of food insecurity writ large.
Well, I don't know if you've been in Seattle lately,
Yeah.
but I mean, now Seattle looks like a third world country because we have such a huge homeless problem.
Well,
We got homeless tents all over the
it is
place.
an urbanization problem, and unfortunately, and I'll get political, but we have not had, in essence, an urban policy in our country on the federal level in many, many years that has really amounted to much. So cities left to their own devices with rising housing costs and the inability to maintain housing stock that is affordable, yeah, you price so many people out of the market. We also, during the Reagan administration, basically closed all the mental institutions. So a lot of people who are having mental health issues have no, recourse but to either live on the streets or be picked up and thrown in jail.
Yeah.
There are any
Well,
number.
these days they don't do that. They just move you from one block to the next.
Well, it's one of the things that's changing that's sort of interesting, and I think a lot of people in my field have very conflicted feelings about this. In New York, for instance, is attempting to effectively say, in California to a certain extent, that you actually can take somebody off the streets and institutionalize them without their permission because they don't have the competence to actually decide what's in their best welfare.
Mm-hmm.
The reason the institutions were shut down in the first place, in part, was because people felt it was heavy-handed of the state to be able to make that determination.
Mm-hmm.
As is always the case, when you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you end up with the law of unintended consequences. And I think the reasons we have a homeless problem.
I work in government. I work as an IT. I've been working for Kane County as an IT guy for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So I see this happen all the time. Is what happens is somebody comes up with a great idea that actually seems like a pretty good idea, and then they run with it, but then they always screw up the details, and then they're too full of themselves or whatever to ever listen to anybody that gives them advice, and so it always falls flat because they goof up the execution of it.
I wouldn't say it always falls flat because I'm very appreciative of what the modern state has given us. I mean, within this world, for instance, the biggest thing that keeps people from starving is the food stamp program, which started in the 60s, and it is enormously successful. It's probably underfunded, but in terms of responding to people's needs, the thing that keeps most people who are poor from starving is food stamps, and that is a federal program. We have clean air, clean water, safe.
That's true.
Yada yada yada. I mean.
I'll have to say, as you know, LA used to be total smog. You couldn't even see the sun during the day.
Exactly.
And now it's really not that bad.
Exactly. I mean, if you were to go back and, like Upton Sinclair, when he wrote The Jungle, in which he kind of wrote this wonderful book that basically said, when people are making sausage, they're throwing any goddamn thing they're shoveling the sawdust in, because there was no FDA back then.
Yeah.
A lot of the rules and regulations that came into being that actually created the idea of a modern state were under Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, responding to the progressive movement in New York. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's happened is we've kind of become a little reflexive in the way we sort of say, government is inherently fucked up.
Isn't Teddy Roosevelt that crazy socialist who created Social Security?
That's Franklin. That's his cousin.
Okay.
That's his cousin. And God bless him. Yeah. God bless him. Yeah, you're talking to a crazy socialist, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean you voted for Bernie?
No, actually, I didn't. I'm what they would call a democratic socialist, I suppose, which is somewhat different. Not that I think Bernie is a democratic socialist. I do believe that if you look at the history of our country and the history of the world, when we have been successful, it's usually because the government has cooperated with private industry to make things happen. We built an interstate highway system. We built a national railway system. We put men on the moon. We created the internet. You don't do it without. It's government.
It's got to be a collaboration.
Yeah.
Oh, dare we get into politics?
Those vaccines, government. So,
of course, there were some people that got rich off it too.
Well, there's a system that's a macro system. There's always going to be waste and fraud. You're not going to take that impulse out of the human being.
Well,
but the one thing you're going to do to actually stop it is to have a more effective. I mean, hey, what's going to stop waste and fraud more than actually a strong IRS as opposed to a weak IRS?
Well, it depends who's running it.
Well, the theory behind government, the bureaucracy is that it's not. I mean, that's why you kind of like rise up and go, no. A president doesn't get to tell an IRS commissioner to weaponize the IRS. That's why we have civil service regulations.
Yeah, we have the checks and balances, and so. Ooh, but there's kind of a thing going on right now where it seems like government sort of overreached on some stuff having to do with social media.
I don't agree with that. Actually, I don't. I don't think it's a function of government overreach. I think it's the fact that we have, since Reagan, demonized government to such an extent that government is unfortunately largely incapacitated at fulfilling some of its key functionalities. The idea that Reagan's big joke, that he made great hay about, is worst thing in the world you could ever hear. Ding dong, hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. Well, that has turned a whole generation or two of people into thinking that government is inherently bad. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They don't believe in it. It can only do damage. It can only be evil. And the thing that benefits are the people who are fundamentally corrupt, who want to come into government to feather their own beds, to make their own bone, and they don't give a good goddamn about.
Well, there's a lot of people like that.
They are. And they're the people who are pushing this government sucks mantra, which is, don't get me started.
Okay, so you're definitely not on the libertarian end of the spectrum.
I am an old school Rooseveltian progressive.
Anti-libertarian. Well,
yeah.
Dare I say that this year,
that's how you define libertarian.
Okay.
There are aspects of I'm libertarian to the extent that I don't think the government has a business poking its nose in my bedroom.
True.
I don't think the government has any business poking its nose into my private life.
True.
But there again, that's one of the things I sort of object to in the far right is that.
Well, it's all politics is the problem. You know how it goes. And you know how it works. They just got to find some issue to get everybody pissed off, so they'll go and vote. So they're constantly pouring gas on everything, to get you to vote.
That is the far right's project. I don't consider that to be the left's project, to be honest with you. But I definitely think that is
dare I say it, but I've been a Democrat for several decades, and then I finally said, you know what, I'm done with the Democratic Party too. I'm officially a forward party guy now.
All right. Well, all right.
It's a lot because of all the stuff I've seen going at work, and King County is extremely left leaning, and I've just seen so many things just fall apart due to a bunch of corruption, Okay. And I finally decided, you know what? Both sides are playing the same politics games, and they know it. They know how to stoke it.
I would disagree with you, but I can't. I can't speak to your personal experience.
Okay.
Both sidesism, I fundamentally reject. One party may be. How do I put this? May not be as competent as you would wish them to be when they are trying to achieve things for the common good. One party I do not believe wants to achieve things for the common good. To claim that they are the same, I think.
Now, which parties are we talking about?
I think the Democratic Party is trying to achieve things for the common good within a difficult and problematic system. I don't think the Republican Party at this point is trying to achieve a goddamn thing for the common good.
Yeah, it depends which news organizations you watch, though. No, let me ask you this. Okay, now we're getting into it. See, this always happens. Now we're into stuff we're both into, right? Now we're going to have a 3-hour interview. But
my wife's going to call me to dinner at 8:15.
Okay. So. Okay, you got to go out. So, but what about like what's going on at the border?
Well,
Like
look at climate. What about climate refugeeism? What about the fact that borders all over the world are going to be teeming with refugees? What is your solution to refugeeism generally? Is it going to be arming the border with people with machine guns all around the world? Look at what's happening in Africa.
We don't want that. Well, okay, so here we go. Now I'm really going to drop a bomb. I'll tell you, the one thing that made me leave the Democratic Party is when they decided that Elon Musk was their enemy. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. Elon Musk, the guy who's owns Tesla, and the purpose of Tesla
Elon Musk, who today basically said, as I'm sure you know, on Twitter, here are my favorite pronouns, prosecute Fauci. So I'm sorry. The reason
I didn't see that actually today.
On Elon Musk, who has let right-wing racists and anti-Semites back onto Twitter. Elon Musk has done his own.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, but the thing is that, well, the thing is the Elon Musk that people know from
being a technocrat doesn't get you off the hook of being a bigot.
Yeah, again, but the thing is the Elon Musk that people know from the news is totally not the Elon Musk that people know who actually follow him, and watch the things that he does in depth. Like, for example, I listened to the 2-hour Twitter conversation that he had. Basically, it was a little 2-hour Twitter free-for-all where everybody could ask him questions, and he would talk to everybody he wanted to, and there were news guys on there and everything. If you listen to that, that's like nothing like what you hear.
He fired 70% of Twitter staff without having a business plan in place to figure out how to actually do what he said he was going to do, which is create mechanisms to make sure it didn't become a racist free-for-all.
But the thing is have you been on Twitter lately? It works fine.
I am deeply considering not being on Twitter anymore.
I know. The thing is,
letting Marjorie Taylor Greene back on Twitter, inviting Trump back on Twitter. Unless you can, I'm not a free. Here's the thing about free speech. It's free speech is not. If I have a business and somebody comes into my business and starts fucking mouthing off, I have the right to say, "Get the hell out."
Right.
Right.
But Twitter, the point is,
Twitter is not. Twitter is a business. If he wants to run it in a way that allows people to come in and say any fucking shit they want, that's his call. But I don't think he's going to be able to sustain that business model. I think it's lunatic, and I think he's going to lose the business.
Well, he actually doesn't plan to do that. He does plan to moderate, but
when is the moderation going to happen? He just fired all the moderators.
Well, I'll tell you right now. I've published some things that would be considered not left wing that went nowhere. In fact, I actually tried to promote some stuff that, as far as I'm concerned, was fine. But so there's still there's some people there that are still censoring stuff, or there's like automatic processes that still do it. So all that stuff hasn't been totally lifted yet.
Well,
yeah.
It's
going to be a problem. I mean, you can't just suddenly snap your fingers and have everything.
Well, he's not going to, for one thing, Europe has a considerably more, I won't say draconian, but they have a considerably more substantive process by which they consider it more of a public utility. They're not going to,
I think we consider telephone companies that way, and broadcasting, there's lots of laws for that. We just haven't figured out the laws for social media yet. But anyhow, the thing is though, the crazy thing is that,
you left the Democratic Party because of that? I mean, that just seems nuts.
No, I'll tell you why. Because I'm like, okay, forget about Twitter. I'm just talking about Tesla. So Tesla single-handedly has started the revolution for electric cars, right?
Which party supports electric cars? Which party supports the green economy?
I know. So that's why I'm like, why in the heck is the Democratic Party that supposedly supports all this stuff, why did they decide to alienate Elon Musk?
Because Elon Musk has come out, and as he's taken over Twitter.
Way before Twitter. Before the Twitter thing.
Yeah, Elon Musk has the ability to be a good business person in some respects and also be a bad actor in other respects. The Democratic Party has responded to those things about him that they object to.
You know what his bad actor stuff is tweeting every once in a while Like,
what about when he called that guy up, the pedophile who was trying to rescue the kids in the cave?
I remember that. Yeah.
Shut up about that?
No. So that was not a good tweet. And so that's not what you expect from a CEO, okay?
Yeah, well, what about the fact he's got these self-driving cars that he didn't really police that have fucking killed people? What about that?
I drive one of those self-driving cars and they don't kill people.
There are a number of people were killed in those self-driving cars because he basically was prepared to say, let's take a chance. And a number of people did get killed.
Yeah. If you look into the data, like the amount of accidents and fatal accidents that happen with, of course, the other thing is now self-driving is so much better than it was then. So now, if you look at it, I just self-drove my car home today.
I'm not saying that
it works quite well.
I'm not saying that it isn't possible for the technology to improve. Of course it is. I'm saying that at the time there were people, and I think there were substantive arguments that would be made that he was rather lax in the ability in his introduction of the self-driving car, that he didn't take the proper precautions to make sure it was rolled out in a way that valued human safety sufficiently. That's a legitimate criticism, whether you agree with it or not.
Okay. I mean, you have to, when you get into these arguments, you got to actually look at the data and the numbers and say, okay, so there's the famous one about the guy whose car crashed into that truck that was going across the street and it didn't recognize it. There was that one. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean,
we're going into the weeds.
Yeah.
So, back to Star Trek.
Back to Star Trek.
Have we even talked about Star Trek yet?
No, we haven't talked about Star Trek.
Oh, we haven't. Okay.
That's because you thought I was Ethan Phillips.
Yeah. Well, everybody thinks I'm William Shatner, so we're even.
Nah.
So, if I take off my glasses, I look just like him, see?
You do remind me of somebody. You remind me a little bit of Bill Macy.
Somebody said I look like, what's his name? The Hell's Kitchen dude. What's his name?
Oh yeah, I can see that. The Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, Mr. Ramsay.
A little Gordon Ramsay, a little bit William Sanderson, and a little bit Bill Macy.
I once got called Michael J. Fox. But
I can see that as well.
Of course, that was a while ago when I was more like in my 30s, and I looked like I was 19. But
is there anything you want to ask about Star Trek? Talk about Star Trek? What
well, let's tie it all in here. So, well, let's see. I can't think of anything. So back to politics. Okay. Here's a good one. So right now, there's the Star Trek fandom is split a bit, where you have the right and left of the fandom. You got the right side of the fandom that's complaining that Star Trek's become too woke, and everybody else is saying, "Dude, have you ever watched the show?" Like it's been like that since day one. But then, and for a while, I was like, "Well, what's the appeal to that side of the spectrum?" And I finally realized the appeal, besides it is Star Trek and it's cool, is that the Federation is still run like a military organization, and that hierarchy and that sort of command structure and stuff like that in Star Trek is appealing to the writer side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I certainly have met a lot of people who like the show and are in the military. So
yeah, I was in the Air Force, but of course, I mean, it's easy. It's very entirely possible to be in the Air Force and still be a Democrat and be a liberal. In fact, a lot of ex-military people become extremely liberal because they see how much crap goes on, and they're like, "Why are we doing this? We're human beings? It's like we're living in this fishbowl, flying through this vastness of space. Why are we all trying to kill each other? It doesn't make a lot of sense. If you just, get about 3 feet away from the fishbowl and look at the fish swimming in it, and they're like, why are they trying to kill each other?"
The writer Philip Clay, Klay, a Iraqi war veteran who's just written some absolutely gorgeous books about the Iraqi war, and that's certainly his perspective, or some of the great writing that came out of
I remember I was in the Air Force Reserves the day we declared war on Iraq. Or did we even declare war on Iraq? I don't think we actually did. We just invaded them without declaring war. And I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. And when we decided that there was weapons of mass destruction there, therefore we're going to invade and blow everything up,
Well,
I knew that day, I was like, this is all
when we
complete
made up a lot
crap.
of bullshit to try and, I mean, clearly there
Yeah.
weren't weapons of mass destruction. It had been a
They
preconceived.
never found them, of course, because
They
they
didn't
weren't
exist.
there. Or
Yeah.
even if they were, it was just, and then what did we accomplish? Nothing, except the only thing we did after all that, besides killing a ton of people, was we made the people who made the weapons rich.
Well, I
That was the
mean,
only thing that was
you go back,
accomplished.
I mean, don't get me started. You go back to the end of the First World War, the fall of the Ottoman Empire, and the Western powers came in and they arbitrarily decided we're going to create Iraq, bunch of tribes, we're going to make it a state because we can control them that way. The same thing they did more or less in Syria, Iran, Lebanon, the modern Middle East was a creation of the West, and it was created entirely to take advantage of their oil resources. They were always client states. I mean,
Okay. So
I
it
got to
goes
be
that
honest
far
with you.
back. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Which is
absolutely.
why Elon Musk is so great, because he's going to fix all that because we won't even need oil anymore.
Yeah. If Elon Musk had unfortunately a geopolitical brain in his head, I'd have a little bit more respect. But
Well,
unfortunately,
he does supposedly read a lot of history.
then I don't know why he's doing what he's doing right now. I mean, why he's citing his
Well,
growth to a bunch of illiterate bigots.
you better
I mean,
watch
I'm
out,
sorry.
though. We got to watch out, though, because the only reason he's staying out of politics is just his
He's not
own.
staying out of politics.
He
He's not
pretty
staying
much
out of
is.
politics.
He is.
He's not. He came out before this election, said vote Republican.
He said he
That
was
is
going to vote
not
for
staying.
DeSantis. He said he used
No,
to
no,
be a
no, no,
Democrat,
no,
and
no,
now
no,
he's
no.
going
He
to.
said he encouraged people to vote Republican.
Yeah, but that's just one little tweet. To think about it.
Yes. How many people are on Twitter? It's not just one little
Okay,
tweet.
watch this. I predict this will happen, actually. The Forward Party at some point is going to be officially sanctioned by Elon Musk. And the dude can dump billions of dollars into it. And that's all it takes to start a new party is money.
Look at the history of American politics. What's the most successful third party in politics in the last 100 years?
Well, there's nobody even remembers.
Exactly.
So, but the thing is right now things are so polarized.
Yes,
that's why I'm like,
that's why it's going to be hard to start a third party because, unfortunately, it is the history of America. We are a two-party system. It is baked in to the nature of our Constitution.
Yeah, but there's so many other countries that have more than two parties. So why can't we do
it? Because their constitutions work very differently. They have different political structures and different systems. I'm not defending the two-party system. I'm just saying that it's on par with saying that you can have a constitutional convention and rewrite the Constitution to suggest that a third party is going to have fundamental success in this construct.
Well, we just had somebody to declare themselves independent, and it made kind of some waves.
No, I'm not saying an individual can't declare themselves independent. You'll occasionally get a green person or somebody who's from a third party, but as a viable party to actually compete on an ongoing basis with the Democrats and the Republicans, I'd take your money anytime.
Okay.
Take a bet.
So here's my thesis.
Time window and put down the money.
Here's my thesis. So suppose we have a Senate that right now that's 50-50. So basically the Republicans and the Democrats keep canceling each other out. Well, if you got a handful of like 3 or 4 or 5 independents that all decided that they were going to be the forward party, say, they would have all the power because they would be the swing vote on any issue.
Yeah, they would have a certain kind of power, the power of the gadfly, but that isn't the power of a political party.
Well, that doesn't. The thing is, what matters is what. Well, you've seen it. Like people got all pissed because what's the other guy who's right on the fence? Yeah, where suddenly those 2 senators realized, ooh, I got a lot of power because I can. Yeah. My vote is the thing that makes the difference. Yeah, and they realize it, and they run with it. Of course,
those are 2 separate issues. You're talking about whether somebody can declare as an independent, and I agree with you, or even staying within a party can basically say, "Here's what I want. I want this committee seat. I want you to spend a lot more money in West Virginia," which is at the heart of what Manchin basically ended up asking for. He asked for pork. That has been the history of American politics. Individual politicians have the power to leverage their particular weight. That does not equate to the power of starting another party.
Okay, so let's just divert for a sec. So how do we solve the other? Well, we have 2 problems. We have 2 parties that are super polarized, and everybody's just constantly throwing arrows at each other, right? And by default, just doing whatever the other party doesn't do, right? whether it's good or not. And the moderates just don't seem to, I mean, there are moderates, but they seem to get stamped out in their own parties now.
I mean, and candidly, to me, the biggest mistake this country has made was the Supreme Court's failure to take up gerrymandering as an issue that they could rule on. They basically said hands off. Their reading of the Constitution was that the Supreme Court didn't get to weigh in on gerrymandering. And it's given the states the ability to gerrymander us into that very issue, where you have so many safe districts that it's about which one of the two right-wing crazies might win this district. No Democrat can compete, or probably from a right-winger's point of view, in a left-leaning district, what left-wing crazy is going to win.
And that's one of the theses of the Forward Party. I think they said that 70% of the people elected are unopposed.
Right, but how is your party or any third party going to address the fact that gerrymandering in the hands of state legislatures has been fundamentally approved by a Supreme Court that you cannot get out of power?
Yeah,
if you wanted to look at what I think substantive change would be, is you have to, one, the Supreme Court's powers are nowhere near in the Constitution as grand as we have turned them into. We could find a number of ways to rein in the Supreme Court's ability to weigh in on certain things. We could expand the size of the Supreme Court. We could create.
Well, we're planning. I mean, that's a strategy right now, of course.
Yeah. Would it ever get through a divided Congress? Doubtful. But that's the problem. Any structural solution you could posit, from revisiting the Constitution, how about this? If Wyoming has 2 senators and California has 2 senators, that's ludicrous structurally.
Right. Well, that's why we have representatives too.
Yeah, but even representatives, the ceiling that exists right now in terms of the composition of the number of people that a representative can represent has not grown. Right now, a representative can theoretically represent 730,000 people. If you expanded Congress to actually do what the founders intended, which was to make sure that a representative stayed close to his constituency because the numbers weren't so high, you'd have a much bigger Congress. I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just saying all the various structural fixes would require the kind of structural changes that we cannot make.
Of course, back then there was no telephones and no internet, so you had to be nearby to be able to influence your people.
Yeah, but I don't, this is where I kind of feel like, candidly, to me, when people get excited about third parties, it's like, I always feel like, how does that fix the structural problem?
Well, there's 2 problems. So one is the extreme polarization between the Democrats and the Republicans. That's number one, right? Or another equally bad.
That's a symptom. That's a symptom of a structural problem. Address the problem.
So another equally bad problem is lobbying. Because basically we got the corporations bribing everyone. So those are the ones who actually get anything done. The people with the most money are the ones who get the stuff done.
Although, again, I will revert to what I don't like about both sides do this, yada, 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 is one party has attempted to eliminate or at least dial back the pernicious power of money in politics for years, and that's the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party is not going to.
With that, what was it? The business about campaign funding limits, right?
Campaign finance reform has always been, and it has been killed repeatedly by Republicans who want, and again, the Supreme Court basically said, right, corporations are people.
Yeah.
So, there should be no barriers for rich people to, basically buy a fucking election.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what happens right now. I've worked in government. Everything boils down to funding. You got to figure out how to fund whatever. And as you know, I mean, even for the Hollywood thing, it's got to be funded somehow,
everything
right?
Everything in the world is money. Everything is funding. I mean, what isn't funding? What isn't money?
Yeah. So, well, here's the other problem now. Now with social media, everything's amped up so that now we're all living in our little echo chambers. And this whole idea, well, here's the thing. This is why I am totally for the free speech. It's like, well, what we had before were people saying, oh, we can't have hate speech, we can't have that. So what it turned into is we can't even have a debate. Like there were so many topics that were getting shut down without even being able to debate it.
I think that to be honest with you, in my opinion, kind of confuses a symptom with a cause. We we now have a profusion of communicative capacity, you know, so much so that everybody and his brother has the ability to go, you know,
right.
That, you know, so we no longer live in a world in which people engage on a face-to-face level. We no longer live in a world in which there's a wonderful book called Bowling Alone. And it basically was sort of about in a kind of quote pre-modern world, you're born into a community in which there's a web of expectation. You're going to join the PTA, you're going to go to church, you're going to be a member of a civic group, you're going to have a bowling team, yada yada. That personal networking builds relationships, and it doesn't allow for the level of acrimony that exists when you're basically kind of anonymously yelling at somebody. I don't think
so the human factor has been taken out.
I think it's the systemic. Again, to me, I guess I always kind of feel like, look at the structure. What is the structure? Okay. Right now, the structure of communication allows for anonymous discourse, which gives people the ability to go, blah!
To demonize. Okay, for example, me and you are arguing right now over Zoom, and and we're kind of throwing some arrows back and forth, but if there's some,
we're face to face,
and we're realizing that we're still talking to a human being,
and we can interrupt each other. I mean, there's a nature of a conversation. You don't get it if you're not. And I appreciate actually Zoom much more than I do Facebook, Twitter, because this is to a certain extent mirroring the nature of what you would get if we were at a bar. Human discourse is full of interruption, overlap. Oh, wait a second. You know, Facebook or Twitter, it's just like, here's my insult, here's your insult. Here's my insult, here's your insult.
Right. And that's where the internet brings out the worst in you of a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have an answer.
Yeah.
Other than certain, you know, I guess, which is where my issue is with Musk and where my issue is generally, is I think we need to have certain boundaries that we can agree to as a society that I don't think impose upon free speech, that say a civilized society recognizes that a certain kind of discourse becomes antithetical to civilized.
Okay. Well, the thing is, we have that free speech says you can't, there's certain things you can't say, like you can't shout fire in a crowded theater. Free speech is not going to cover you for that one.
Exactly.
And we've worked through, I mean, when you go back and look at the First Amendment, it talks about Congress not enacting laws that would restrict your free speech. So free speech has now become much, much more than what the First Amendment
and the implication is that, you know, you're not going to get arrested for what you say. You're not going to, it doesn't mean that you're not going to lose your job. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be ostracized in the public square. It just means you are not going to be liable to the government coming in and saying, no, you cannot.
Well, it's expanded way beyond that now, though.
Well, I think that's one of the things we've lost sight of, is I kind of feel like, you know, we now equate when we talk about zealots of free speech. I don't see Musk practicing what he preaches. He's talking about suing people for having, you know, spilled his secrets. So if he's a free speech zealot, you know, apparently it stops at his wallet.
Well, okay. The thing is, here's the crazy thing is that the only news organization that is digging into this and treating it like a news item is Fox News. Everyone else is ignoring it. The thing is there's it's not crazy right-wing stuff coming out.
That's not true. I don't agree with that. I mean, Fox is covering it from their perspective.
Well, they're running with it because, of course, they, you know.
Well, they're viewing it.
They love it.
They're viewing it from their perspective, but it doesn't mean that it's not being covered. It's being covered everywhere. I mean,
I look over and I looked at CBS News. I looked at CNN. I looked at all the other ones, and like I don't see it anywhere on the front page of their websites.
You don't see what? What don't you see?
I don't see the Twitter. Like every day, the Twitter files they're exposing all this evidence that's talking about how the government colluded with Twitter. The government, see, the point is not Twitter, but the government used Twitter as its agent to shut down all these people. For example, the biggest one that I saw just the other day was there was this guy who was a PhD in medicine, plus he went to Stanford University or someplace like that. And he got completely shut down because he had a study that said we shouldn't lock people down. We should just sequester the older people, but let the younger people work freely and develop herd immunity. So we had that study out there, and it got completely blacklisted, and it went nowhere.
Well, there was an attempt, which I think, you can have an argument about whether or not there were public health reasons to attempt to stanch the flow of ridiculous disinformation about either the efficacies of vaccines or the reasons of wearing masks in a public health emergency. I don't know.
But the scary thing is what they're uncovering in Twitter is they're going through, there's no process. If you look at all these emails, you see people just randomly banning people.
Well,
according to their whim.
I would not agree with that. The process, if anything, was a process that may have, from a right winger's point of view, erred on the side of trying to attack what was disinformation. That gentleman from Stanford, his studies had been repudiated by almost every bit of empirical evidence. I mean, I'm sorry, I know exactly the study you're talking about.
Good.
And there was an attempt to say, hey, one of the things we're trying to combat is bullshit. Now, you could say, hey, you can't, don't stop bullshit in a public forum. Everybody should be allowed to bullshit.
Yeah.
But the whole point of, I think, what they were trying to do with Twitter, and I think this is true for Fox News, is say, where do you get to say, excuse me, if you lie, then, no, you cannot. We get to say, not on my channel.
Yeah. But the thing is the problem is, I mean, you have to admit that if you go and look, because Twitter was in San Francisco and everybody who worked at Twitter was a Democrat and quite far left, that was considered the norm.
Or you could say, just to flip the script, or you could say, wow, the Republicans and the conservatives might wonder why so many of the liars are on the right. Which is what I would say to Fox News.
Well, I think what's going to happen, I mean, this is what Elon Musk has stated he wants to do with Twitter is, excuse me, they do want to have content.
His actions belie his rhetoric.
Well, give him a chance. He's got had a month so far.
And
here's what I've heard.
The staff.
This is what I've heard, is that they will have content moderation, but what they want to do is if somebody gets, if their account gets restricted or whatever, it will say your account has been restricted because of this and this, and it'll even say because a complaint came from somewhere. For example, let's say some right-wing senator didn't like your tweet, so they complained to Twitter. They'll say, we restricted this tweet because such and such senator didn't like it. So you could see why it got banned or shut down and who was the one that requested it. So it's all transparent. Well, rather than right now, it was nobody knew what's going on.
Structurally, all I would say is that for the nature of, and I don't understand the business model, but it would seem to me, if your house was on fire and the fire department showed up and the guy who's in charge of putting out that fire said, okay, 3/4 of you guys split, we can take care of it, and your house went up in flames, you would probably say, I should just give him more time. Because as far as I'm concerned, what I see Musk doing when he fires everybody who is capable of providing the capacity to do what you're talking about.
Okay,
I don't have any faith in him.
Of course, I mean it's a normal thing for when you take over a company
to fire,
to lay off a ton of people.
I don't think that's normal. I mean, yes, that can happen because you are more interested in your profit than you are in the business you're running.
Well, I think one of the main reasons why I did do such a mass layoff is because he wants Twitter to not have to rely so much on advertising money. So
what a dumbass way to do it. Alienate every one of your advertisers.
Yeah, but he got them all back.
No, he has not gotten them all back. He's not gotten them all back.
I mean, he got Apple back. What he did was
Apple never left. He hasn't gotten the automobile industry's back. I mean, you said
the automobile industry hates Elon Musk. He's the Antichrist. That he will always be the Antichrist.
Yeah, well, all I'll say is you said check the data. So go and check the data and see what percentage of advertising, what percentage of the revenue coming in is coming in from advertising. Now, it's only going to get worse. No advertiser in his right mind is going to want to be on a site that is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, well,
anti-Semitic posts have gone up something like 300%. And I'm sorry, but that's just, again, check the data.
Well, okay, here's the counter that child pornography and so on, and all that stuff has gone way down because they completely shut it down. So why did Twitter allow that to keep going for so long?
I'm not sure. I don't know that.
Child trafficking and stuff. Since Musk got on board, I think they reduced it by a factor of 30.
I need to look into that. I'm not going to faith, but I've not. What I have certainly read is that he is very quick to point the finger at people he does not agree with and call them, well,
that whole saga is like years ago.
Well, no, it just happened a couple of days ago. He did more or less did the same thing. I mean,
what was this one? I guess I missed that one.
He's been bandying around some of the the pedophile accusations of late.
Oh, that's come up again?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is another thing that kind of irritates me because I do feel like this is one of these absurd QAnon charges that gets bandied around all the time. As if you're a Democrat, you're a child molester. I mean, you said earlier, and I think you're absolutely right, that one of the great weapons is to sort of say, what's the worst thing we can possibly call the opposition? Let's call them that. And that's
but the Democrats do that all the time. They do. I mean,
give me an example.
There's so much mudslinging. I could go over to Twitter. Like, for example, Tulsi Gabbard is now the Antichrist. When she left the Democratic Party, they jumped on her so bad.
Give me a categorical, though. I mean, I'm saying that, the Republicans are inclined to speak in categories. We're groomers. We're rapists. We're child rapists. Give me the Democratic equivalent.
Hate speech, racist, bigot. That's the one is that Republicans are bigots. See?
Not all, but certainly there are significant, Do you think Donald Trump is a bigot?
Oh, yeah. Trump's a total shit.
Well, so he's the president of the United States and the leader of the Republican Party. I mean, I see it to me, again, that's a false equivalent.
I finally figured out what the appeal for him is. So the appeal for him, even though I would never in 1,000 years vote for him no matter what, but the appeal is that he's anti-establishment. And people really dig that. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if they still do now. I think it's just the call to violence. But I will say that I remember reading this like nutty thing when he was running against Hillary, and it basically said, who do you think is smarter, Hillary? Who do you think knows more about this, Hillary? Who do you think cares more about the common, Hillary? Who do you think is more authentic, Trump? And it's like, he's a liar, he's a grifter, but he's an authentic liar. He's an authentic sociopath.
Yeah, okay. There you go. He's truly a narcissist. He discovered his narcissist soul, and he just runs with it big time.
But I mean, that's a sad commentary on the American public. If that's I'd rather have a sociopath that I think is, more entertaining because he's unguarded and anything will pop out of his mouth than somebody who's competent because I think they're
Well, but I mean, right now the Democratic Party has a different type of issue because I mean, Biden is like really.
I think Biden's doing a great job. Biden's doing a great job. I mean,
but who's pulling the strings? Like who's putting?
Biden's doing. I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Nobody's pulling the strings. Biden is doing a great job. He's a stutterer and he's older, and so yes, he isn't going to be as fluent. Although on his best day, he can string 3 sentences together in a way Trump never could, and he's not a liar. I will say that, to my mind, the nature of what we're up against internationally, economically, is beyond the capacity of any one man to manage. I mean, inflation has more to do with disrupted supply chains, the war in Ukraine, 40% of the world's grain has been disrupted. Oil markets are through the roof. How's any fucking person going to deal with that? What are people's issues with Joe Biden?
Well, my biggest issue is that he is against Elon Musk.
That's silly. I'm sorry, but forgive me. That is silly.
No, it's not. Well, think of it strategically, though. The thing about Elon Musk is, for one thing, he's got 140 million Twitter followers. Okay. Plus, he's got a huge fan base. And his companies are doing amazing things. So you're alienating that chunk of people.
When you're considering why you might support or not support somebody,
I'm talking strategically right now.
That is strategically, you should think about what policies the guy support. Do you want somebody who's actually going to fight to save Ukraine, or somebody who's going to abandon ship? Do you want somebody who gives?
But now hold on for a second, because one of the huge reasons why Ukraine is winning the war is because of those Starlink terminals. And who gave them to him?
And who's threatened to fucking yank them?
But he never did.
But I mean, the fact that he would threaten in the first place.
The only thing
I'm not taking anything away from the skills he has as a technologist or the nature of what he has done. I'm not that conversant in it. All I will say is that Musk's behavior from the time he moved to take over Twitter to now, to me, has been one egregious communicative and rhetorical misstep after another. And you can clearly see him moving to the right in a way that I don't think is healthy for our country.
My thesis would be is that the left moved him there when they decided to abandon him.
No, not when you say prosecute Fauci. This is something that I'm not okay with right wingers saying, hey, the left has moved so far left that we've merely, our views are now considered to be extreme when they're not. Prosecuting the guy who actually was able to fight for the health of the nation and fight for vaccines that have saved a lot of people, when a lot of people were perfectly prepared to see Americans die by the millions, and to say that he's somebody who should go to fucking jail. The right wing can go fuck themselves.
All right, now we're getting into it.
I'm sorry, but you pushed a button for me.
Okay.
As soon as Musk said that almost made me say, fuck you, I'm leaving Twitter.
Okay, I missed that tweet too.
Oh, look at it. It came out today.
When did that one come out? It came out today?
Yesterday.
Oh, okay. So I missed a lot of stuff.
And just to be clear, he said, here are my pronouns, prosecute Fauci. So he also managed to insult the concept that people who have gender issues might, want to use a pronoun. So it was like, a nice little cultural dig and a fucking attack on a guy who, as far as I'm concerned, is a national hero. So,
All right. Well, I'm just not up on. Yes, today I've been totally off the internet because I've been, as I told you, my mom's in the hospital, so I've been spending a lot of time in the hospital. Plus, it just so happens this week, it's Christmas season, so there's a lot of gigs I played. That's why. Am I still wearing black? No, I took off my black. So I missed some of the latest stuff, apparently. So now can we finally talk about Star Trek?
I've given you multiple opportunities to talk about Star Trek.
Okay, so Star Trek. So as the Star Trek Doctor Phlox.
If anybody's still listening at this point, they are. All I can say. We've alienated the liberals and the conservatives at this point. There are only 5 guys listening
so now we can finally talk about Star Trek. Oh, no. It's whatever. The dilithium crystals have been deranged.
As the Star Trek Doctor.
As Mr. Phlox, as the Doctor, what would you say was his greatest contribution to the crew?
Sense of humor, sense of buoyancy, sense of balance. I think he went on that journey fully prepared to die. And he had a very Buddhist, I think, outlook. Lived a rich life. It was worth the sacrifice. So I think, the original premise of the show was that we were the first ship. The weapons are exploding. We don't trust the transporter. We've never met alien species before. Everybody was kind of tense and wired. And the Doctor was like, well, do the best we can.
Doesn't matter.
We'll do the best we can.
So he was the original Eckhart Tolle then. Before there was an Eckhart Tolle doctor, was Dr. Phlox.
Yes. I think that's what, to my mind, that's what intrigued me about him. Oh yes, Power of Now, absolutely.
My favorite book ever. So it's one of those books that I've read it cover to cover several times, and now I just open it up at any particular page and use it sort of like a tarot deck and just say, oh.
Yes, they have little cards, Eckhart Tolle cards that you can.
Yeah, I've also watched tons of his YouTube videos. So Phlox, so most actors will find a slice of themselves to put into their characters to create an authenticity. So it sounds to me like there was a pretty authentic slice of yourself that you found for him.
It's just the nature of the process. Yeah, your job is to kind of find a way to personalize and justify, consequently, whatever the script is asking you to do. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. Playing the child molester, that's harder. Playing a character like Phlox, who has great buoyancy and a sense of humor and a sense of playfulness and a deep sense of integrity. To me, that was, I mean, it's lovely when you get the opportunity to play that. I make fun of it, but as a character actor, I frequently play nut jobs and scalawags and
Of course, now you said you were 62, so now you're getting into the golden years or the silver years, as it were. And I've noticed as I'm 56 that as I get older, I do conduct my life with more and more abandon, and I'm more likely to just speak my mind and not really care what people think. But back then, you were much younger, right?
I was.
Back in the day?
I was 40.
Okay. So did you already have that curmudgeon in you yet, or
I wouldn't say
abandon?
I wouldn't say curmudgeon. I would definitely say that yes, I was fairly. I've always been fairly outspoken.
Okay.
Not well. Witness our conversation. I'm not going to hide my light on social. I'm certainly perfectly prepared to speak up.
As am I.
that on the other hand, having said that, when you're on a television show, nobody gives a fuck what your opinion is. You're there to do a job. So in a scene, you might say, hey, just a thought, it might be interesting to conceive of it this way as opposed to that way, but the clock is running. You don't get to make the ultimate decision, and you never hold up camera. So generally speaking,
well, there are ways. For example, Andrew Robinson was able to kind of work some stuff in that later the writers picked up on.
I mean, we all do, the best we can to kind of communicate a point of view about not just a scene, but our character. All I'm saying is that day in, day out, the work of the work is to make sure that everybody has a good time, gets out at a reasonable hour, and you respect everybody else's working process too. I have worked on a lot of shows where I kind of feel like people, stop the work to make a mountain out of a molehill.
And waste everybody's time.
Yeah. Waste everybody's time. I mean, the crew works brutal fucking hours, and you have an obligation as an actor to make sure that they're not, there for 1 minute longer than they have to be, while making sure the work is good.
Okay. So as far as on the show, you worked with various directors, right? Did you get to direct? I don't know. Did you get to?
I never had any interest. I was a stage director for a while. I had a theater company back in the day in Seattle, and I directed, but that's never been my love. And I never had any interest in directing for film and TV because so much of it is, technical expertise, and I'm not technically savvy. I'm not great with no interest in learning the mechanics of directing for the camera. They also, I should say, our show, which I jokingly say is the show that killed the franchise, franchise revived, but they stopped allowing the actors to study to become directors. So the various other
that's not very nice.
Well, we had shitty ratings. This came from CBS. It didn't come from Rick and Brannon. But, it was kind of a miracle we even got 4 seasons. Really, we probably should have been yanked after the first if the ratings were what mattered. But we were on UPN, and UPN was a dying network. It didn't really have anything else except wrestling. So they were going to, just keep us there until the network died, basically.
Thing is, I heard some counter argument to that where actually somebody was saying the ratings were actually much better than what people were saying at the time.
Yeah. No, our first
something like that.
Episode, we had, I think, 10 million. Our second episode, we had 2. So,
was the first episode the one where were spreading the gel on each other?
Yes.
But that gel scene was supposed to multiply the fans, not destroy them.
No, I know. I think there are a lot of things that they thought would be, instead were, like what? No co-ed bathrooms, and it's like, come on, give me a break.
Like you got to get the Starship Trooper scene in there.
I think they, I think they kind of made some mistakes. I mean, I feel badly because Rick and Brannon were rushed into production after Voyager went off the air. Actually, as Voyager was finishing its last season, Paramount said, "Okay, next show, get it ready. We're gonna go right away." Rick and Brannon said, "Give us a year. Give us like 6 months. Let us figure out a Bible."
Yeah.
Studio said, "Nope, keep it going."
You mean a Bhagavad Gita, right?
If you say so. I'll leave that to you. So I think when we launched, I sort of had a sense that they were grasping a little bit for stories.
Okay.
Candor and.
But you know what the funny thing is now there's people that are going back and rewatching the show, and there's a lot of people that are saying this is the best of all the Star Trek shows. This was really good. And
I'm happy there are people who are feeling that. I mean, my sense is somewhere in between Sill and Charvadus that it wasn't it had its problems.
Well, the theme song was a bit controversial.
Yeah, that wasn't the issue so much as I think there were a lot of episodes that to me felt a little flabby, that I feel like, they were tired. They'd been writing so many episodes of Star Trek for so many iterations that I think they kind of were repeating themselves a bit.
Yeah, kind of recycled.
Yeah.
But if you go back and watch the original series, there are some pretty stinker episodes even in there.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And the ones that I liked, I mean, I thought, the ones where when I think Star Trek works, excuse me, is when they actually have a very interesting kind of, science-driven question that has to do with the moral conundrum of what it means to make decision A, decision B. And when they cloned Trip, when Trip had to decide whether or not he was going to interfere with an alien couple's ability to use another creature as a surrogate to birth their child, those episodes I thought worked very well. There were some where I kind of felt like it was the menacing alien of the week, or where I just kind of thought that they leaned a little bit too much on a kind of a leaden whimsy.
Yeah.
But,
Okay, here's a question. So in your show, were you guys able to deviate from the script, or did you have to say exactly what was on it?
Exactly what was on it.
For no improv or anything as well?
No, not a bit. I did an episode of Stargate while I was on the show. They were very gracious to me. They were always very sweet to me, and they let me, because I was number 7 on the call sheet. I had episodes and I didn't have a ton to do. They let me double dip. I could go off and do other gigs, which I even look back on now and I think, well, that was really, unusual of them. That's not usually the way things work in TV. So I did Stargate, and I went up and I did Stargate, and Stargate was all about, that's it, have fun. Whatever comes out of your mouth, that's fine. We'll just do it again. I was like, oh my God. If you drop a participle on Star Trek, it's like, whoa, there's a the there. Where's the the?
You left out a comma, goddammit.
Yeah, and, they had the alien pronunciations. Poor Linda, who was our translator, who had to kind of translate all the alien gibberish. And they always had a front page where they'd list all the alien words. And it was always, gargaboo, not gargarboo, gargarboo. It's like, Jesus Christ, I got to get the diacritical accent right. I felt very sorry for her. Fortunately, I did not have as much gobbledygook. Once I learned how to say the endocrine system, I was in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Yes. So, of course, your castmates are kind of making a revival too.
I know Dominic and Connor have podcasts.
Yeah, they got their podcasts.
Yes, I've been getting.
And they were at STLV, and I even got in a bit of an argument with Dominic.
That may just be your temperament.
Well, okay, I got to tell this one. So I'm at the table, right, and that place, it's kind of like a free market, right? It's just like going out. It's that's why I dig the vendors room at STLV. It's got that energy of like just vendors selling fruits and vegetables and stuff, right? So I'm there and I'm like, well, okay, so how much for this? How much for a signed autograph for that? And he goes like $40. I'm like, okay, so how could I get like 2 for 65 or something? And he goes, look, man, I worked so hard to get this way. The price is $40 and that's it. You think I just sit here? You think he started going off on me like, you know how hard I had to work to be able to just sit at this table and get this autograph, and that's the price.
That sounds like Dominic.
Meanwhile, his buddy there, Connor, is sort of going, cut it out, man. You know, you just lost a sale. But in the end, I ended up but the thing is, with me, I sort of thrive on conflict. So I dug in and I started going at him. You know, funny thing is somehow
that's the way to deal with it. I couldn't agree more. I always, you know, Dominic can be a. I love Dominic. Actually, he's a great guy. He's got a big heart, very smart guy. But yes, he's. You think I'm like, you know?
Well, of course,
Dominic is like has no filters at all.
Well, the other thing about I quickly picked up about Dominic is while he's thrashing me, he's thinking, you stupid American Yankee, you don't know shit. All you guys are idiots. You know?
Well, so, you just have to give it back to Dominic in spades. I came up with a song.
Well, I'm working on my RP, so the next time I see him, I shall give him a verbal lashing that he will remember for years to come.
Yes, Dominic is somebody you just need to kind of, you know, and actually what I love about Dominic, what I loved about everybody in the show is that everybody could give it as much as they could take it. So we generally were. I think this is actually, from what I've heard, true of almost every one of the shows. Deep Space Nine, they worked those guys to fucking death. I mean, huge hours. So they may not have necessarily always managed to keep their good humor. We actually had reasonable hours for the most part, and generally speaking, I think there was a sense of frolicsomeness on our show that I appreciated.
Well, you exude frolicsomeness. Even when we're yelling at each other over politics, you retain your frolicsomness.
I think it's important to maintain a frolicsome nature. It's all just gabbing in the end, you know.
It is. We all breathe the same air. We all take a shit in the same pot.
On that note, I'm now past my dinner hour, so I'm going to need to go and rest.
You have as Winnie the Pooh would say, there's a rumbly in my tumbly.
Well, it's more that there's a wife upstairs who is going like, where is he?
Oh, I don't want to mess up your marital balance.
You're fine. She'll cover. But I'm going to if you have any closing notes or closing thoughts or closing questions, but I'll say my goodbyes.
Yeah, so well,
we've certainly covered Elon Musk. I don't think we need to talk about.
Yes, we did. Well, I'm assuming
I've never talked as much about Elon Musk in my entire life.
I'm hoping there'll be an Elon Musk Orville episode.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to watch that.
So the Orville. So anyway, I mean, we all sincerely believe that the Orville season 4 will happen. It's just first we got to get beyond Ted. Ted has to come out. Then Seth can then go back to the Orville season 4. So, except that you were a bad guy. So, but maybe you can come back as a totally different character.
I don't have any skin in that game, so whatever.
Okay. Well, I forgot to ask you about Shakespeare. I'm assuming you have some Shakespearean actor training, correct?
I certainly did a lot of Shakespeare when I was younger.
Okay.
My train, excuse me, I got a little bit of head cold.
Do you have any interest in ever doing it again?
No, I think my theater career is behind me now. I mean, as much as anything, just because the physical demands of age.
Well, why does Shakespeare necessarily have to be theater? I mean, why can't you do it with a camera and a green screen, for example?
Because nobody's going to want to buy it or go to it.
Well, who cares if they buy it or not? It's art for its own sake.
I do. I want to get paid.
But you're already independently wealthy.
I'm still not doing Shakespeare for nothing.
Well, how about
I ain't doing Shakespeare
popcorn?
For nothing. Because there are other things I'd rather do.
Okay, I'll pay $100 an hour.
Gotta be scale at least.
I thought scale was $100 a day.
No, that's ultra low budget scale.
Well, actually, see, my show is what's it called, micro budget or whatever. So I'm allowed to
I'm not charging you nothing because you're promoting my gig.
No, not this show. I'm talking about my SAG approved show that now is allowed to have SAG actors and non-SAG actors, and it's called micro budget. So I'm I'm allowed to do it, and SAG won't get pissed at me.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But get this, I've been talking to some SAG actors, and I'm like, well, I typically pay $100 per Zoom call for green screen shoots that take an hour or two. I'm like, well, that's great. I used to get $100 a day, so that's actually better than what I'm used to. You know.
Then you should hire them, because for me.
Okay, 150.
I know. No, I'm gonna get my quote.
Okay, whatever.
Get my quote. No, the nice thing about being old is that it's so much easier to say nope.
Yeah, you can just say, you know what?
Always happy to do podcasts. Always happy to kind of like go to conventions. I love.
I certainly appreciate you being on the show,
and
I'm glad we could be candid. So, and it was fun actually digging into politics, because I knew that is actually the thing that you're really interested in.
I'm interested in a lot of things, but I'm never shy about talking about politics.
Well, the thing is, I mean, some people say, I don't want to talk politics. The thing is, it really does affect us. Like, if we don't debate and discourse, then nothing changes.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. And, to your point, I mean, here we are. We had a perfectly lovely conversation, if cantankerous at times, but I've traveled the world, and I've sat at a lot of bars, and I've had a lot of arguments with a lot of people who I disagree with much more virulently than I disagree with you. And,
again, I think you probably agree that, I mean, what we got to do is we got to kind of get a little closer to the center.
but
we got to compromise somehow.
Yeah, I do, but I'm afraid, unfortunately, that if you can't figure out a way to address the problems that are structural, that's not. It's not like you can wave a magic wand and say, "Why can't we all just get along?"
Speaking of magic wands,
and to your point, very good.
Dumbledore. But how do we do this structural thing? I mean, we have to agree to make the changes. So how do we even do that?
I don't know. I wish I had an answer for that. I mean, I will say that,
I know what we can do. We can create a show that has metaphors that tell us all these things to do, but it's all within this sci-fi show. So it gets into our subconscious. Yeah. And we can influence people subconsciously.
Well, I will say that that's a lot of what Trek Talks is sort of about. It's to say that the folks who are fans and followers of Star Trek, the celebrities, the fans, et cetera, do on some level, whatever their political differences, share a desire to move ahead on the basis of cooperation, collaboration instead of conflict.
So that we aren't just shitting in our fishbowl.
Yeah.
And actually, the water in our fishbowl might actually get a little sweeter over time.
And for me, what that really means, and I'll end it on this note, for me, what that means is like whatever your voluntaristic bliss is, whatever might make you happy working in your community, I think everybody should just dial that up a little bit. Whatever that is, just dial it up a little bit. If everybody dialed up their give back,
share the love, thing that you love, share it. Yeah.
All right, my friend, it's been
very good. Live long and prosper.
Can't do that, but the Denobulans do this.
Okay, Denobulan, and then in the Orville you say Geloja long and prosper.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you know what that means? No. You know what Geloja is?
Do not.
Geloja is the ritual that Bortus does once a year. He has to go back to his planet and pee off a cliff. So Geloja long and prosper has, of course, if you're over 50, that's also a good thing.
I only watched the episode I was in.
You got to watch the Orville. It's actually really good.
Yeah,
and season 3 really rocks.
I'd rather read a book.
Oh, are you writing any books?
No, I'm a reader, not a writer.
Have you written any screenplays?
Yes, I've written a few screenplays.
Ah. Are you writing any right now?
No. I that ship has sailed.
Why is that?
It's extremely hard to get a screenplay produced, and you're not going to see much money from it in all likelihood. And
have you ever written a radio play?
No.
Because those are easy to do. All you need is a couple voice actors and some sound effects.
I'm not looking for more projects. I'm very happy working with the Food Coalition and reading my books and taking the occasional acting job. So that's and now I do have to go because now I
okay. How about that? So thank you so much, sir. I look forward to our paths crossing again.
I look forward forward to.
And I also look forward to donating more to the Food Coalition.
Oh, well, bless you. If you share the word, that is all I can ask, and I really appreciate your doing that.
Yeah, okay. So we'll put links to that down there too. So guys, donate to the Food Coalition. John Billingsley might respond to you.
Tracktalks.net, and come check us out on January 14, 10.
Yeah. So that's like a Zoom meeting or something like that, or
it's going to be a Zoom. You go to tracktalks.net, and they will give you all the information, and you can see last year's show, which is still there from when we broadcast it on YouTube.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, time to go take care of the stomach and take care of the marriage. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. I love you. Peace and love. Live long and prosper. Jalo long and prosper. And then what was the?
This is just I just thought that nobody was
Pranakasha production. Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life.
For the benefit of all beings everywhere.
We gotta change.